this is Kate at the Library of Whispers, and today I thought we could take a look at this article. It's from the BBC History magazine, and it is all about King Arthur, out and about history explorer. So it says Miles, Russell and Spencer Mitson visit Tintagel Castle in Cornwall to explore its links with one of the world's great mythological figures. Now I've been to Tintagel Castle myself. It is a really magical place. And here is the large photograph of it, as you can see. It's possible that there was an Iron Age fort up here ruled by an Arthur-like warlord. The ruins of Earl Richard of Cornwall's castle sit atop the island of Tintagel. Building the castle at a site with such strong associations with King Arthur was a canny political move, says Miles Russell. So, let's have a go at reading the article. King Arthur, heroic British warlord who led the fight against marauding Anglo-Saxons, or a figment of a writer's fertile imagination. It's a question that's been puzzling poets, chroniclers, historians and filmmakers for more than 1,000 years. And nowhere does this question have more resonance than on a small, wind-swept, rain-battered headland projecting into the sea off North Cornwall, Tintagel. Numerous sites across northwest Europe, from Glastonbury Abbey in Somerset to the forest of Paimpont in Brittany, have trumpeted their connections to King Arthur, yet surely none are as intimately linked to the legendary warlord as Tintagel. That this is the case is almost exclusively down to the endeavours of one man, a Welsh cleric going by the name of Geoffrey of Monmouth. In the 1130s, Geoffrey set about writing a history of the kings who had ruled the Britons over the preceding 2,000 years. The resulting Historia Regum Britanniae is among the greatest pieces of medieval history writing. Though not an entirely reliable one, it tells us, for example, that Britain was founded by the Trojans and introduces us to King Lear. So, not that accurate. Yet most significant of all, says Miles Russell, senior lecturer in prehistoric and Roman archaeology at Bournemouth University, is what it tells us about Arthur in his Historia Regum Britanniae. Geoffrey gathered together a series of legends from Western Britain to come up with a single narrative of the past, says Miles. So, in the case of Arthur, he related a tale that had been passed down by word of mouth through the generations. In this story, Uther Pendragon is besotted with Igraine, beautiful wife of Golois, Duke of Cornwall. Uther is determined to have Igraine for himself, and so, with the help of the wizard Merlin, assumes the image of Golois and tricks his way into Golois's castle at Tintagel. And it is here Geoffrey tells us that Arthur is conceived. It's not hard to divine Tennyson association that has drawn visitors to Tintagel for centuries, and I was one of those. After Earl Richard's death, the island fortress went into a long decline and the castle became a romantic ruin. That's how it stayed until the 18th and 19th centuries, when a series of artists such as Alfred Tennyson, fired up by a renaissance in interest in ancient Britain, began championing Tintagel's connections to the Arthurian legend through paintings and literature. By the end of the 19th century, tourists were flocking here to witness Arthur's castle and Merlin's cave. Celebrated creation. While most modern historians agree that it is simply impossible to establish a historical link between Tintagel and Geoffrey of Monmouth's most celebrated creation, those tourists keep coming. Tintagel is now one of English Heritage's top 5 attractions, drawing up to 3,000 visitors a day in the peak summer season. With a new outdoor interpretation of Arthur's legend, featuring interactive exhibits and artworks, set to be unveiled in 2016, which I've never seen because I haven't been there at that time, and plans in place to build a new 72-metre long footbridge to link the mainland with the island in 2019. The future is looking bright for this dark age site. And that, says Miles Russell, is also the case for Arthur. He's moved beyond his status as an obscure British king to one of the world's greatest mythological figures, and so there will always be another element of his legend that can be drawn out. I don't think his story will ever end. Interesting. So in this column here, we have 5 more places to explore. So if anybody ever gets the chance to come across to the UK in the future, and you're interested in King Arthur, this is where you need to go, as well as Tintagel. So number 1 is Cadbury Castle in Somerset, where an ancient fort was upgraded. This Iron Age fortress was first linked with Arthur in 1542, when the antiquary John Leland claimed that Cadbury had been Camelot. Excavations here in the late 1960s demonstrated that there was indeed significant remodification of the prehistoric fort in the post-Roman period, but whether this was the headquarters of a monarch who inspired the myth of Arthur is unknown. Number 2, Glastonbury Abbey in Somerset, where Arthur was reburied. Glastonbury today has strong popular associations with King Arthur. This is in part due to the romantic setting of both the ruined abbey and the Tor, but also because it was here in 1191 that monks disturbed 2 graves, supposedly those of Arthur and Guinevere, establishing Glastonbury as Avalon. The bones were reburied by the High Altar, providing a lucrative pilgrimage attraction. Number 3, the Great Hall, Winchester, where a round table hangs. On the wall of the Great Hall of Winchester hangs a large round table. The round table was added to Arthur's story in the 12th century and has become a potent aspect of the myth. Dendrochronology suggests